An admission of fear on Loki's part is unexpected. So unexpected that neither of you quite seem to know what to do. You kneel on the bed, tangled in the blankets, and watch as he paces. Back and forth, back and forth. Are you worried? You finally ask. Loki pauses and glares at you.
You do realize all it takes is one errant backhand to kill you, don't you? You have the relative durability of wet parchment.
Yeah, of course I know. I think about it all the time, in fact. Hence the whole keeping my head down thing. Oh, Jesus, you can be so...
So what?
You can be a real dick. You snap, and then you scramble back as Loki narrows his eyes and makes a beeline towards you, crawling onto the end of the bed and settling himself down cross-legged. He holds out a hand.
Come here, mortal. We need to talk.
I'm pretty sure I can talk from here, thanks. There's kind of a weird look in his eyes, and you don't feel like finding out exactly what that's all about at the moment. Not until he calms down a little bit. Closing his eyes, Loki takes a deep, slow breath, and you imagine that he must be counting to 10 or something, because as soon as he's done, he darts forward, grabbing your ankle and dragging you toward him. Major deja vu here. You're quick to push yourself up on your elbows, your cheeks burning. Seriously?
If you would just do as you're told, then perhaps we would not be in this situation.
He says, his grip on your ankle still firm. What situation? I didn't do anything. I froze up because that guy looked creepy as hell. But that's not a crime, is it?
You have no idea what's happened, do you?
He reaches forward and lifts you the rest of the way onto his lap, and you try to ignore the fact that you're now straddling him. At least you have your irritation to focus on, so that's something. No, obviously. Loki looks stern, and his face is way too close for comfort. You cave in. Okay, so I didn't obey, and I know that looks bad, but...
That is not it.
Then what is it? He sucks on his bottom lip for a moment, as if he's debating over the wisdom of actually explaining things to the pet. Honestly, you feel like you're at the point where full disclosure, or even mostly full disclosure, is a good idea. He's the one who said the two of you needed to work together after all.
Thiazzi and his brothers are ancient, as old as Odin Allfather, and very powerful. They're not easily misled. I'd hoped they would not find any weakness in me, for they are certain to make use of it.
It isn't like you don't get why that's a problem right now. A good chunk of his support comes from the fact that people are afraid of his magical powers, and the fact that he's kind of crazy. Crazy in a ruthless, destroy entire cities sort of way. So we just need it to make it look good, right? Like you punished me? He sighs, and you can practically see him reeling himself back in, the worry melting away from his features. You've never really noticed just how long his eyelashes are. It's kind of a weird observation to make, considering the circumstances. Although you normally don't have intense conversations this close to someone else's face, so maybe that's part of it.
That we will do. And it will certainly help to keep up appearances for the rest of the court. But as for Thiazzi and Gangr, the chink in the armor has been revealed. If I have any emotion tied to you, mortal, it will be exploited.
Loki's forehead rests against yours.
I cannot feel anything for you. Understand?
Yeah. You reply, and you do understand. You really can't afford to feel anything for him either. But you do. So, what's the plan? There is a plan, right? You say eventually, breaking the surprisingly companionable silence.
There was a plan, but it has been entirely derailed at this point.
He's been rubbing your back for a while, nearly lulling you to sleep, and you're pretty disappointed when he stops and practically pushes you out of his lap. You climb over the covers as he goes and digs through one of the bags that's been left near the doorway. It's cold, and you don't really want to complain about it, because you're pretty sure there isn't much Loki can do about it at the moment. You want me to scream? We can put my acting skills to work. Pretend that you're beating the crap out of me for being a terrible pet. Will that help? You ask, only half joking. There's a hint of a spark in his eyes when he turns back to you, and even though that usually means trouble, you're kind of relieved to see it.
Actually, that is not a terrible idea. A bit of sport? I suppose I could use the diversion.
He then holds up a thin band of gold, then one that suspiciously looks like a collar.
This as well.
Isn't that a little extreme? Loki gives you an extremely judgy look as he drops the collar into your lap.
I can see that my continued leniency has given you a false sense of security here, mortal. Consider this a small price to pay for your protection. Besides, I thought that mortals lusted after gold.
The runes inscribed on the collar are familiar, and you squint at them, frowning. I know that says Lokakona, and I know what Lokakona means.
Do you have a point? Lift your hair.
He takes the collar back from you, bending it open, and your eyes widen. It's yet another casual display of strength, and it's unsettling. How does he not crush you every time he moves you around? Must have very finely tuned reflexes. Bet you figure it's a fair move. You can consider it a prop, can't you? All the world's a stage, after all. Besides, collars are kind of in, at least in some fashion circles. This is just a temporary thing, right? It'll come off once we get back to the palace. Once everything settles down.
We will see.
He bends it around your neck, and you try to swallow down a lump that forms in your throat. You wish you could slap a collar on him. Fair is fair. At least it's pretty lightweight. Ugh, listen to yourself. Trying to talk up the pros of wearing a freaking pet collar? You look up, poised to complain, but there's kind of a funny look on Loki's face as he slides 2 fingers under the band of the collar, presumably checking to make sure it won't choke you. That's what you're assuming, even though the way he's lingering seems a little gratuitous. Your neck is much more sensitive than you've ever realized. Hey, Loki? I think the collar's good.
Right.
His hand drops away, and he looks you over, contemplative.
I could actually punish you. You have certainly earned it, after all the trouble you've caused me.
Or we could go with the whole faking it plan. I like that one. Plus, it'll look like you healed me, right? And that's extra cruel. You healing me so that I'm still functional, and it makes it look like you've got power to waste.
Impressive. I suppose you do have your moments, mortal. Come, let us act.
Loki pulls you from the bed and sets you on your feet. You're almost starting to get used to how physical he is all the time, and you wonder if that's a bad thing. There's a hint of a smile in his face as he leads you close to the doorway and then presses your back against the wall, and you suddenly find yourself rethinking the entire endeavor. Maybe if you didn't have that little mischievous sparkle in his eyes, or if he just kept his freaking hands off of your waist, you'd be able to keep your cool. But he isn't, and you're not. Well, figuratively, at least. You're very much keeping your cool in a literal sense, because the temperature in the room seems to be dropping as the night progresses. When you get back to the palace in Utgard, you might just beg to hang out in the steam pools for a few days, because the constant cold is miserable.
Go on. This is the one time you have my permission to wail like a banshee.
Loki whispers. This is so awkward. Why does Jotunheim have to be such a miserable, backwards place? And poor Greep and Gjalep are probably going to be losing their minds if they hear about this, especially after Gjalep has decided that she owes him some kind of life debt. You try to remember what one of your friends told you about fake crying a long, long time ago. Fake the motions. Think of something upsetting. That part is easy enough. You've got plenty to cry about these days. Face scrunched up, you clench at Loki's tunic, willing some tears to come to make it all extra authentic. Please, sire. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Loki looks startled, and maybe even a little impressed. You don't have much time to revel in your success, though, because he rips your hand from his chest and pins them by your head, his eyes narrowing. Okay, I guess we're getting into character now. That's cool. You think, your heart picking up the pace. He brings his mouth close to your ear. You must be the only one who's actually supposed to get overheard during this bizarre performance.
Louder.
Please!
I should give you away, shouldn't I? Let someone else deal with you.
You're kind of surprised that you can see what he's going for so easily. Surprised that the two of you seem so in sync with each other. Please don't. Master, forgive me. He clasps a hand over your mouth, and you pour as much sound as you can into a long, drawn-out shriek. Loki grins, dragging you back to the bed almost immediately.
I admit that I am impressed. I had no idea that you were such a conniving little actress.
He says as he climbs in beside you, heaping blankets on both of you. Such a patronizingly delivered compliment shouldn't make you feel like blushing, but it does. You tell yourself that you're probably just riding the waves of awkwardness from essentially role-playing with him. Well, I think it's pretty messed up that you're having to pretend to be some kind of brutal tyrant.
Do you mean to suggest that I am not a brutal tyrant?
He wraps his arms around you, and it's all you can do to not audibly sigh in relief. He may not be radiating heat, but it still helps. I don't think a brutal tyrant would pretend to discipline a slave instead of actually doing it. I don't think a brutal tyrant would throw himself off a cliff to save two teenagers he barely knows. The mirth has left his eyes, and you're sorry to see it go. You can't really tell what emotion it is that's taken its place.
Would a brutal tyrant lead a conquering army to Midgard, murder his sire, and attempt to destroy the realm of his birth?
That hits hard. Why do you keep forgetting? Or maybe you're not forgetting, maybe you're just choosing to ignore the facts. It's almost impossible sometimes to remember that he's that Loki, the one from New York. Yeah, I guess so.
Do you know how many of your kind perished when I last visited Earth?
What sort of point is he trying to make here? I do. And I get it. You're terrifying.
I am. And I don't believe that you do.
He replies, sighing and tucking your head under his chin. You wake up shaking in the middle of the night, the bed beside you empty. Immediately, your mind begins to race. Did something happen? Is he safe? Are you safe? Pushing yourself up on your elbows, you peer towards the far end of the room, dimly lit by firelight. Loki?
Here.
He's sitting cross-legged by the fire, a knife blade glinting in his hands. Jesus, why do I keep waking up to people holding knives? It really says a lot about your current quality of life. You should sleep. Tomorrow's a really big day. I know you're tired.
What woke you?
Well, it's cold. You feel like you're emitting something shameful. Sorry for my warm, squishy body, I guess. It's really cold and you weren't here, so...
You can come here, if you like.
Don't mind if I do. Dragging as many blankets as you can manage, you pad across the room, wincing as the cold seeps through your socks. Wish I had a thermometer. I want to know just how cold it actually is here.
We've actually experienced a great deal of fluctuation in the temperature. It's only near freezing now. But you are able to feel it more keenly without the charms at full effect.
What? It's been colder than this? Smiling faintly, Loki sets the knife aside and opens his arms, leaning back against one of the chairs as you settle into his lap. You have a sudden, intrusive memory of when you were a little kid, curling up under piles of warm, toasty laundry fresh out of the dryer. That's probably what you look like right now. What's going to happen tomorrow, Loki? The bigger question, the one you're afraid to really ask, still hangs in the air. What happens after tomorrow?
I assume you've never been on a hunt. We will go into the forest and track down Mánagarmr. He's apparently something of a menace, terrorizing many of the smaller forest villages. It will be up to me to actually kill him, of course.
Is that really feasible? Don't get mad, but I've never seen a giant wolf monster before, and I've also never seen you fight.
It is feasible, but that does not mean that it will be easy. It would be less complicated if not for you. I'll have to keep you with me, now that Thiazzi's taken an interest in you. Leaving you here would be a risk.
I want to go anyway. We both go down together, you know? I feel like I should be there. Is that really true? It must be. You said it without even thinking.
Ridiculous! You should not be here at all. And you're addled if you think that you have any place hunting for a walk.
Does that mean you're gonna send me home sometime soon? Loki falls silent. Ha! Checkmate.
Stay out of my way. When we are out there, mortal, no matter what happens, you are to remain wherever I leave you. Do you understand? You are not to interfere in any way.
Yeah, like I would voluntarily try to take on a monster alien wolf. Yeah, right. Okay. You're warming up a little now, though you can't imagine that he's very comfortable in this position. Going out in the snow tomorrow is going to suck. Then you remember that you haven't really had anything to eat either, and you're just about to ask for some breakfast.
If I die tomorrow, you should throw yourself upon the mercy of Bylester. His interest should be enough to keep you shielded from the others for a time. And Heidor might eventually spot you and send aid.
You aren't going to die. Don't say that.
Well, I certainly hope not, mortal. But it is best to plan for contingencies. If I survive, as I plan to do, then things are going to get very complicated, and quickly. There will be no choice but to accept me as king. And any who dare to oppose my throne at that point must be dealt with, and swiftly.
Helblindi. You're worried about Helblindi. You say, rubbing your cheek against the fabric of his tunic. It feels nice. A little rough, but nice.
Worried is a bit of a strong term. But yes, Helblindi seems troublesome. I am relying on Frostbite and Skadi to keep him in line. If he has no support, then perhaps he'll be too fearful to make a move against me.
This is exhausting. All this drama. Bed? You yawn, your capacity for middle-of-the-night scheming entirely used up.
You sleep. I'm fine as I am.
You're pretty sure he didn't sleep at all, based on the dark circles under his eyes and the way he's pacing about the room when you wake up a few hours later. It's like someone who stays up all night studying for a really important final exam, only much, much worse.
I have food for you. Finding a way to feed you in the hall with the others seemed complicated, and I thought you might prefer the privacy.
You thought right. They'd probably expect me to eat scraps off of the floor or something stupid like that. You tell him, shoving the covers away and rushing across the cold floor to put on your boots. Loki's smirk is teasing, but tired.
Likely so. And to think, he once protested eating from my hand.
I was still processing how screwed up this whole human pet thing is. I still think that, by the way. Not a fan of being a human pet.
I know. Eat.
Your appetite isn't exactly fantastic, despite the fact that you should be starving right now. It must be the nerves. Is this a hard-boiled egg? You ask suspiciously, picking one up from the bowl on the table and hefting it in your hand. It's big. Like, really big. And kind of weirdly elongated.
I believe so, yes.
Well, that's not exactly convincing. Expecting it to taste weird or bitter or fishy, you're a bit shocked when it tastes exactly like a normal egg. It's probably best that you don't know what kind of freakish alien creature it comes from, you decide. Ignorance is bliss, after all. And is this milk supposed to be pink, or...
There are berries crushed in it for flavoring. I've had some. It's surprisingly good.
It reminds you of watery yogurt. Not too bad. A little more tart than you'd like your milk to be, maybe, but not too bad. Have you eaten?
No, I will dine with the others. Eat, and then we will freshen up. You should always look your best when meeting your destiny, you know?
Freshening up doesn't turn out to mean a full bath in this case, and you tell yourself that you aren't actually disappointed. Really though, you're already courting disaster. Might as well get naked one last time before you potentially get eaten by a monster. Girl, your priorities are getting really messed up. You really aren't a fan of how judgy your inner voice has been getting lately. The hall has been arranged with 2 long tables down either side, while you're with Loki at the head of the table, in full view of the entire room. There are a lot of curious looks aimed your way, and you're pretty sure you notice a few double takes at the collar around your neck. He decided to keep you right at his feet, which you're pretty grateful for, considering the fact that there are a bunch of mangy, lion-sized dogs fighting over bones in the middle of the floor. Truth be told, you would scramble right into his lap if you thought that you'd be able to get away with it. You're also grateful that Bylester is sitting on the other side of you, because you're at least relatively certain that he won't decide to just randomly squash you for the heck of it, which seems like something Helblindi might do. But despite Loki's best efforts to make it seem like you're not really worth mentioning, you keep getting brought up in the conversation. Gangr in particular seems way too interested for comfort.
What good fortune you have, Loki, Laugh-Face, son. To not only have found a mortal in your possession, but to have found a female, and one so young.
God, what a creep. You internally shriek, practically clinging onto Loki's leg. All at once, you remember all of the comments about mortals being kept around to warm beds, and you remember Loki telling you that Gangr is really ancient and skeevy, and you remember how tense Loki had become as soon as he took notice of you. Hell, how tense even Bylester had become.
Fortune favors me.
Loki puts his hand on your head. Maybe when he gets all of his magic back, you can ask him for a charm that would let you punch people twice your size without breaking your hand. Some of these giants definitely need a solid punch or two.
She looks mouthy. It's all in the eyes, you know. You can see when they are thinking. The last mortal I had, it was nearly 2 millennia ago now. Bitter little creature she was. spiteful. They need discipline.
Gangr continues, and even though you're hidden from seeing him, his grating voice makes your skin crawl. Helblindi speaks up from the other side of Bylester, curiosity evident in his voice.
What became of yours? Did it learn?
Alas, no. The full thing tried to flee. The dogs got her. A waste, really. And then the war started, of course, and our supply of mortals dwindled.
He says, and you see Bylester sneak a peek down at you. It's clear that he's heard this story before. Poor woman, you think, your stomach churning. Imagine being here with no magical savior, no support. Throw yourself upon the mercy of Bylester, Loki said. Now you understand why. On the spectrum of creepy giants, he isn't looking quite so rough these days. Thiazzi laughs from the other side of Loki. Again, too close for comfort.
I will never understand why some of them try to flee. An exercise in futility. You must keep a close eye on that one.
Perhaps you simply do not understand how to handle mortals, as mine has never attempted to evade me. In any case, I have more pressing things on my mind.
Such as being devoured by Mánagarmr?
Helblindi asks, and you hear a dull thwack as he slams his mug down onto the table.
You have never even left Jotunheim, have you, boy? It is easy to speak boldly while you still cling to your mother's skirts.
So says Loki Odin's son, who all the realms know clung so tightly to the skirts of Frigga Allmother.
You can feel his temper swell, but he settles back into his seat instead of lashing out, his legs splayed wide. His casual power stance. You're growing weirdly attracted to that.
My prince, there is no call for these squabbles.
Silence, Skadi. My quarrel with my brother here is just. Or have you forgotten so quickly that I am meant to be king?
It is time. You weren't expecting to hear Heidor speak, and apparently no one else was either. Silence then falls. It is time to go forth and seek Mánagarmr. The Valva has spoken. You're clinging to the mane of a very shaggy, massive pony, with one of Gjalp's arms wrapped around your waist. A fall from this height would be extremely unpleasant. You really wish that you got to ride with Loki, though maybe it's best that you aren't with Loki, considering he's the one most likely to get caught up in a battle sometime soon. The woods are eerily quiet, and every cracking branch and errant whistle of wind puts you more on edge. You'd imagine that there would be a whole hunting posse sent out into the forest to hunt for this monster wolf. But no, it's just Loki, you, Gjalp, Bylester, and Rossihoff, who is still looking a little under the weather. All of the other giants hung back at this huge hunting outpost at the end of the road. You guess they must be waiting to see if Loki crawls out of this one alive. Where are we going? How does he know where to go?
Scent. And Illy is tracking his scent, I'd expect.
The ground starts to slope downwards after a while, and there are a few ragged spires of rock jutting up through the trees here and there. Based on your limited knowledge of topography, you assume that you're probably headed towards another river. Don't wild animals usually hang out near water sources? It is the easiest place to find prey, and this giant wolf will probably consider you prey. Eventually, the horses stop near the edge of a steep dip in the terrain, one that looks particularly tricky to navigate. You're shaking like a leaf, partly from the cold and partly from the stress. There's a little bit of a sixth sense warning you that something in the woods isn't quite right. Maybe it's the fact that there aren't any other animal sounds.
There's no need for the rest of you to come any further.
Loki frowns. He swings down from his horse, resting his hand on the hilt of the dagger in his belt as he edges closer toward the rocky ditch. There's also a knife strapped to his arm, just inside the sleeve of his tunic. You know this because you're the one that put it there. No magic this time. Only the man. To say that you're worried would be an understatement.
The cave is further along the creek bank. He is certain to be near.
I know. There are benefits to being a sorcerer, little brother.
Loki takes a little bottle out of one of his saddlebags and takes a swig. He then grins. You're going to have to talk to him about all of this potion drinking he seems to be doing lately. Then he heads down into the creek bed, without so much as waving goodbye. It feels like it's been a few hours waiting for some sort of sign, but according to Gjalep, it's only been a few moments. No one is doing that much talking, which makes the whole thing seem that much more ominous. A howl suddenly rings through the woods, startling you so badly that you nearly fall off your horse. Rossihoff slides from his saddle, giving his own pony's flank a reassuring pat.
That is no wolf. That is Loki Laufeyson,
He declares. Another howl comes only a few moments later, and his face is grim.
That is Mánagarmr.
It isn't exactly difficult to hear when the snarling starts, or the trees cracking as something, or someone, presumably crashes into them. It's too much. You have to see. He could be dying, not very far away, while you just sit here. You're tired of waiting around helpless. I want to get down. The howling seems to get louder as soon as you say that, and your adrenaline is cold in your veins.
I understand that you are concerned in anger, but the king has given me strict orders, and besides that, it would be the highest dishonor to interfere.
Being tiny has its advantages, and you manage to duck under her arm, tumbling to the ground. The snow breaks most of your fall, but it's still extremely unpleasant. Move, move, move. He needs you. Maybe the giants expect you to run away from the danger. Maybe that's why it takes them a moment to react. And in that moment of delay, you run towards the sound, skidding and slipping on the icy stones that lead to the creek bed. You hear a snarl of rage that's most definitely Loki. You recognize it anywhere. Somehow you know that he's hurt. You don't question how you know, you just run.
Stop, mortal!
Bylester shouts. You're probably going to get in trouble for ignoring a royal command later, if you survive. You round a sharp corner and nearly tumble off a sharp drop-off. It's most likely a waterfall when the water is really flowing. Below you is, well, you don't really know what you were expecting. It's a wolf. A really big, really angry-looking wolf. Your head is filled with a string of curses. The thing's got to be at least 10 feet tall at the shoulder, maybe taller. Its ears are pressed flat against its head, and it's snarling, circling Loki in a weird sort of dance. There are bones everywhere. This must be where it drags its meal back to feast. Loki's hands are empty. That's bad. There's a knife stuck in Mánagarmr's shoulder, also bad. Where's the other one? Why doesn't he have the other dagger? The wolf darts to one side suddenly, and that's when you spot the glint of the other knife, lying on the icy rock near the entrance to the cave that the wolf must call home. Crap, 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 crap. And there's blood in the snow, at least some of which must be Loki's, judging by the way he's clutching his shoulder. Without his knives or his magic, what has he got left? It isn't like he can just wrestle the thing to the ground. He feigns to one side and then rushes forward. He's trying to work his way closer to the knife, and somehow, Mánagarmr seems to realize that too. The wolf's lips peel back in a snarl, and you can only tell by the way he's pawing at the snow that it's gearing up to pounce. One bite with those teeth. You've got to do something. You jump to your feet and wave your arms. Loki will get to the knife in time, right? Too late to back down now. Hey! Hey, wolf! You yell, and you nearly faint when the wolf's head snaps towards you, its shiny black eyes narrowed. Loki glances up at you then, his face full of pure, abject rage. No time to worry about that now. There are rocks everywhere, and in your moment of recklessness, you decide that throwing one at the monster wolf makes about as much sense as anything else that's happening right now. Mánagarmr's growl rattles the snow from the trees as it stalks towards you, its hackles raised. One good jump, and it could probably reach you. You stagger backwards, and then crouch to feel for another rock. Not that the first one actually did anything, but still. Turning to run seems like even a worse idea, because it's not like you can outrun that thing. And then, Loki leaps onto his back, burying the second dagger into the thick fur at the base of Mánagarmr's neck. It seems to be more of an annoyance than anything else, but it does distract it from you for a moment, and it throws Loki from its back and charges toward him, its maw gaping. Loki thrusts his bare hand forward, ice appearing from seemingly nowhere to encase his arm in a long blade as the wolf's momentum carries it forward. You scream as its teeth clamp down on Loki's arm, but then it staggers back and collapses into the snow, blood pooling around its mouth. As for the king, he's on his knees, his arm hanging uselessly by his side, dripping melting ice and blood into the dirt-churned snow. You practically throw yourself down to the basin floor, rushing towards him. It worked. It worked. He did it. Oh my god. You say, your hands fluttering uselessly around the gory mess of his arm and shoulder. It's okay. We can fix this. Just... He grabs your wrist with his free hand, yanking you close.
I told you to stay away.
You're pretty sure he's just getting started, but the other giants rush to the basin then. They must have been waiting for either Loki or the wolf to die, which is a pretty stupid set of rules in your opinion. Gjalep wrests you away from him, and Rossihoff tears off a strip of his cloak and is just beginning to bandage the wounds when Loki slumps to the ground.
Go, carry the word that Loki Laufeyson is victorious, and that he is injured. Have healers ready for him.
Bylester says.
Yes, sire.
And Gjalep, tell no one that the mortal interfered.
She nods, and despite your protests, she throws you over your shoulder and hurries back to the ponies.
They will watch over him. Please, Inanga, stop this struggling.
You're tossed across the saddle, and then she climbs up behind you, and the breakneck ride back to the outpost begins. It's chaos after that. When she delivers her message to the giants at the hunting outpost, Gjalep turns to ride for Thrymheimer. Apparently, she's considered to be one of the faster riders around, and so the unfortunate job of delivering news of Loki's success to Thiazzi and the rest of the court falls to her. You're pretty worried about how they'll take it. You're also starting to worry that maybe leaping out into the snow without one of Loki's extra strength warming charms to keep you safe wasn't such a good idea. Because that sleepy, fuzzy feeling that you had when you first met him in the cave is starting to set back in. It's the worst possible deja vu. Gjalep, I think I'm freezing to death, you say, trying to sound as calm and collected as possible.
What?
Freezing to death. It's pretty bad. You repeat, wrapping as much of her cloak around you as you possibly can.
Oh, by Helblindi, will the trials of this day never end?
She cries. She cradles you closer to her with one arm, leaning forward as the horse speeds across the ice and snow.
Hang on, Inanga. We are very nearly there. Just hang on.
You're left bundled up in front of the fire in Loki's room, instructed to not move until someone comes for you. Really, you're too cold, stiff, and aching to move even if you wanted to. What the hell were you thinking? Using yourself as bait for some freakishly enormous wolf? And you apparently interfered in some sacred rite, which is a big enough deal for Bylester to try to cover up. Loki is going to kill you. But if you had done nothing, he might not even be alive to kill you. So at least there's that. When he storms into the room hours and hours later, his arm heavily bandaged and his eyes flashing fire, you instinctively try to scramble to your feet, tripping awkwardly as the blankets tangle around your legs. Loki! Oh, thank God, you...
I told you, you wretched little thing, to stay where I left you. Did I not?
He stalks closer, and you take a hesitant step backwards.
You have interfered with my fate. You have disobeyed me yet again. And you've very nearly gotten yourself eaten.
He's in your face, and there's really nowhere left for you to go. The stone wall is right behind you, and judging by the vibes you're getting off of Loki, he isn't about to let you wiggle away. I saved you!
You should by all rights be dead now, mortal, for your ceaseless stupidity.
You raise your hands to shove him away, an instinct that still remains strong, despite how futile you know it will be. But before you can do anything, he lunges. Loki's long fingers are wrapped around your jaw, and you're starting to grow concerned that he might have forgotten that you're not quite as sturdy as everyone else on this godforsaken planet, because it hurts.
Go on, mortal. Strike me, I beg of you. Give me yet another reason.
He snaps, his crimson eyes sparkling. Your hands wrap around his wrists as he pushes you back against the cold stone wall. His teeth are bared, and he looks slightly unhinged. So maybe that's why you panic. Instead of doing the smart thing and going limp, and maybe even begging for forgiveness, you flail out and kick him in the ankle. It couldn't possibly have hurt him, as invulnerable as he seems to be, but Loki lets out what sounds like a curse, his eyes narrowing, and then he hisses your name, and then his lips crash into yours. For someone who typically seems so exact about everything he does, it's a surprisingly messy, urgent sort of kiss. His teeth scrape against your lips, his tongue pressing into your mouth. You could swear that his hand is burning your skin as his grip softens, sliding from your jaw and down to your throat. This is one of the things you'd feared from the beginning, isn't it? This crazy god king deciding to take advantage? Only... Loki breaks away, his hand still holding you against the wall, and you never imagine those crimson eyes could look quite so lost. When he finally speaks, his voice is strained, but surprisingly soft.
Kiss me. Must I order you?
No. I'm afraid, and something flickers in those eyes then, but his expression hardens before you have a chance to wonder what that might be.
Of me? Good. You should be.
And maybe it's because your brain is still a little scrambled from the suddenness of the kiss, or because you can tell he's about to start ranting again, and you really aren't in the mood to listen to it. No matter the cause, when you reach up and seize him by the hair, he lets you pull him forward without any struggle. And when you kiss him, you guess he must be in shock, because it takes him a second or two to respond. Loki drags you with him as he stumbles back towards the bed, hissing as he lands on top of his injured arm. It doesn't seem to distract him for long, though, and as you fall on top of him, he cradles your head and guides your lips back to his. He smells so good, like sweat and snow. Those aren't even things that you knew you liked, and now you can't imagine ever getting enough. Please don't stop, your mind whispers. If you stop, he might never kiss you again, and right now, that's one of the worst things that you can imagine. You wish that his arm wasn't injured and that he could touch you. You wish that you weren't wearing a million layers, because feeling his skin pressed against yours suddenly seems like the most desirable thing in the world. Brushing his hair aside, you pepper kisses down his jaw, his throat. Loki makes a strange sound and slides his hand down to your lower back, pressing you against him. Okay, so he likes that. He really likes that. When kissing his neck earns you another appreciative roll of his hips, you sink your teeth into his skin, and Loki groans.
Wench. Disobedient.
Tugging your hair, he pulls you away from his neck, capturing your mouth again.
Disobedient little wench.
He continues as soon as he breaks away, his eyes dark. You like it. You whisper accusingly, twining your fingers in his hair.
Perhaps, if he'd been eaten, I never would have forgiven you.
He fumbles around for the covers, dragging them over your back, trapping you in the warmth. Same. He's exhausted, and you're exhausted, and you rest your head on his chest, smiling slightly at the way his heart is pounding. Mine too, you think.